Good morning, everybody. Before I start addressing the work that the Maigue Trust is doing with local communities, I want to give you some background about the Maigue and some of the environmental challenges that it faces. The River Maigue catchment is a sub-catchment of the Lower Shannon. It's about 1,000 square kilometres, mainly in County Limerick. It's underlain by limestone geology, so that means it has a very productive ecology. The main land use in the catchment is intensive grass-based agriculture. It was formerly an important spring salmon river, but unfortunately salmon numbers have declined, as they have in many other Irish rivers. It's still an important brown trout fishery, and a sub-catchment of the Maigue, the Camogue subcatchment, is a priority area for action in the current river basin management plan. So what are the environmental issues? Well, they're ones that are common to many catchments in Ireland, except that we seem to have possibly more of them. The main one is unsatisfactory water quality caused by nutrient pollution. The main pressures would seem to be agriculture and urban wastewater treatment plants, but domestic treatment plants, septic tanks in other words, are possibly also a contributory factor. But it must be said that the relative contribution of these sources really hasn't been quantified. The most recent EPA assessment of water quality last year, you can see the map of it here, showed that the majority of the 33 monitoring points or stations in the catchment have moderate or poor WFD status and are therefore in an unsatisfactory condition. In that assessment, 2 sites actually improved, but 7 declined and the rest were unchanged. The second big problem we have are invasive plants and animals. Giant hogweed infests much of the main channel. Last year, crayfish plague, which is an introduced fungal pathogen, arrived in the catchment, unfortunately, and is really playing havoc now with the crayfish. Mink are another significant problem in the catchment as well. The third issue is poor hydromorphology. This is really a legacy of drainage and poor riparian zone management. Much of the catchment, in fact, is heavily modified by drainage. So this has negative impacts on aquatic biodiversity and also on fish life, particularly salmonids. It's likely that these negative effects are going to be compounded in the future as well by climate change. For example, to low water, summer water levels, such as we're having at the moment, in fact. In recent years, we've seen increasing riparian habitat removal that you can see here in this slide. The last issue, and there are other issues as well, but the last significant one are barriers to fish migration. There are at least 13 barriers, weirs, dams, and other artificial barriers in the catchment, and some of these at least are probably significant barriers to migration of migratory fish such as salmon and eels. So how is the Trust engaging with communities to address these problems? Well, the Maigue Trust itself grew out of a community response to a serious fish kill in 2014. So this and other pressures highlighted the need for a new way of caring for rivers that relied less on top-down regulation and more on developing a sense of stewardship for our rivers. The Trust was established in 2016. We had unstinting support from many different sources, but especially from Limerick City and County Council and also from Mark Horton from the UK Rivers Trust. We have charitable status and we're a company limited by guarantee. Our general mission is to protect, enhance and cherish the rivers and lakes of the Maigue catchment for the benefit and enjoyment of all. The board of the Trust is made up of 10 voluntary directors that are drawn from the community. They're community-based, and they represent the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, social, and the environment. We also have 2 non-director members: Anne Goggin, who's our local authority liaison, and Liz Gabbett, who's our recently appointed project officer, and I'll say more about that post at the end. One of the challenges that groups such as ourselves face early on is making the local communities aware of us and getting buy-in from them. So very early on, we established a website and we publish an annual newsletter. From the start as well, we had meetings with local communities and community groups and other stakeholders to get their views on establishing a trust and to see their priorities and so on, and to tie those in with our own aims and objectives. We had meetings with angling clubs to discuss their priorities. We publish fisheries and water quality reports on our website. We also offer support to angling clubs to secure funding from IFI schemes such as the Salmon Conservation Fund and the National Strategy for Angling Development. We've also got funding to research fishing rights and access. This is a big issue in the catchment. One of the issues that we came across early on was a lack of information. There was a lot of information out there, but it was rather scattered and rather diffuse. So we took action to actually make this available in a more condensed form on our website. So information on fisheries, for example, and water quality and other things. But at the same time, by the way, we keep that regularly updated. At the same time, we recognize there were knowledge gaps, particularly in relation to biodiversity and riparian habitats. So to address that, we commissioned studies. We got funding from LEADER. We got funding from the Community Law Pros Community Water Development Fund, from Castlepool Wind Farm Fund, for example, to commission these studies. And all of these are published and they're available on our website. With local communities, towns and villages and tidy towns particularly, we organise a signage programme, and here's one in Brewery. And these highlight the catchment and its biodiversity. They're well illustrated, and they have a map of the catchment and so on. They're creating catchment awareness, really, which a lot of people may not be aware that they actually live in a catchment. From the start, we've been very eager to highlight the place that the Maigue River and the tributaries play in the cultural and social life of the area. So to this end, last summer we organised the music and magic of the Maigue in conjunction with the Ballyhara Cultus branch. And this was a great success. This celebrated the cultural history of the catchment. And this particular event was part of a larger event, in fact, which we organised in collaboration with Croom Development Association. Part of that was a public kayaking event. We had 50 participants in this last year. We got Hershey Council funding for it. And along with this, we had an exhibition by Inland Fisheries Ireland on river biodiversity. And we also had exhibitions, demonstrations on fly fishing and fly tying. We'd actually started the kayaking event the previous year because we actually found that it was a great way of creating awareness about the river environment and the pressures on it. Community involvement in participation in citizen science is really a great way of creating awareness about the river environment and its challenges. We got funding for 2 workshops on water quality monitoring using the small stream characterization methodology, and these were delivered by Professor Ken Whelan. And this trained 30 participants in water quality assessments using macroinvertebrates. And from that grew a volunteer group that monitored the smaller streams in the catchment that are not in the EPA or local authority monitoring network, but they are nonetheless very, very important for biodiversity and fish spawning and have been somewhat neglected up to now. And it's only now people are really realizing the importance of these smaller streams. So that sampling started in spring last year. Unfortunately, it has been put on hold at the moment because of COVID, but we hope to resurrect that very, very soon. And from the work of that volunteer group, we developed, with funding from LawPro's Community Water Development Fund, a plan for enhancement of the salmon spawning potential of the River Drumcamog. It's a small headwater of the River Maigue. And that plan emerged from consultation with the community, with local authority, with IFI, and with landowners. And again, that's available on our website. So we're now looking for funds to implement that. And if successful, it may be a model that we can extend to other streams in the catchment. The Trust developed a European Innovation Partnership proposal in 2017 around agriculture and water. Now, this project didn't secure funding as it was deemed too expensive, but it had a very positive outcome in that the Trust forged very strong links with farmers, farming organisations, dairy co-ops, Ballyhara Development, IFI, and a range of other stakeholders. And the operational group that put that proposal together is still active, and no doubt we'll put together further proposals in the future. An exciting project that we have at the moment is the River Environmental Stewardship Project. That's funded by EPA and run out of Mary Immaculate College under the supervision of Dr. Catherine Dalton. It's a PhD research project. It commenced in January 2020. The researcher is Donna Wiener. Our project partners, there's the River Trust UK, the local community, and the community water officer. And our objectives really in that project is to co-monitor and develop appropriate citizen science programs to develop a spirit of stewardship towards the river through citizen science, and to mainstream large catchment scale citizen science initiatives. In late 2019, LawPro and the Rivers Trust announced the Irish Rivers Trust Resilience Project. This is a major development for supporting community action in managing the local water environment. It's providing funding to the Maigue and Inishowen Rivers Trust to each employ a project officer for 3 years to help them transform from fledgling volunteer-led organisations to self-sustaining charities that are capable of delivering on their core objectives and catchment scale projects. It will allow the Trust to engage with local communities and support community involvement. That really wasn't possible up to now. Now, there are still funding challenges. Our funding reduces each year. Even if we're successful in getting external funding, many of the funders don't permit any percentage of the funds to be used for supporting staff employment costs. So that's a policy change that we will need to change. And finally, then, to the future, we need to expand awareness and education outreach. The Trust also needs to recruit a broader network of supporters and volunteers. So we're currently looking at creating a portal for this purpose on our website. We're also working on a brief for a recreation and leisure study for the catchment. We're looking funding for that. And the focus in the future will be implementing the recommendations and plans of the baseline studies, such as the Drumcamog study, which relate to habitat improvement. So we'll be getting more active on the ground with landowners and other stakeholders. Ultimately, we're working towards an integrated catchment plan for the catchment, which will have a shared vision of the catchment based on economic and environmental sustainability. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please put them through to the app, and we'll answer those then later. Thank you.